Thank you.
Welcome to the jungle.
That was a good introduction.
That was good.
That was really good. Good job.
All right. Hello,
That was
everybody.
getting good.
On this great Sunday, we are doing trend lines today, entry and exits. Um, Trend lines only. So we're going to try to keep this as basic as we can, and it still might get a little confusing. But we're going to start on August 25th. If anybody wants to follow along, but I'm sharing my screen. Scale says he was also sharing, so that should be enough for now. So, couple basic rules for trend lines. And first off, we're not going to use any support and resistance lines, because if you're trend line trading, your entry is a trend line, your exit's going to be the trend line. So I don't have any drawn. We're going to do trend line only, and then give you a couple suggestions about entries and exits. Some of them might be a little aggressive. Some of them is going to be safe. And let's see how it goes. So on this day, we're not gonna go bar by bar, but we're gonna kind of go close. We come down
What date is this again?
August 25th,
All right.
0825. So we have established the low right here. And anybody new here, this might be new, but anybody old here would hear me say it before. The way that I do swings, and it's going to come into play in a little bit, is two candles in the opposite direction. So we went red, we got two greens, so this is my swing. So we've set a low. So what we're looking for now is a lower high. That's the first thing we're looking for. And then a lower low. So we got a lower high, if you want to count that. And we got a higher high. Now here, and we're going to do this because some of y'all are going to do this, which is, with as much information as we have right now, is perfectly fine. We're going to draw our trend lines from wick to wick. So what we are looking for now, price action is going to have a lot to do with this. It's another higher low and keep going. So we got that, technically a double bottom. We can move our trend. And that is our second touch now. This was, but we set one over here. Okay. This could be your third entry. Now, again, we draw it wick to wick. So we're going to bring this down here like this, because we're not in the trade, so we can move it. We bounced off. We went green. If you want to be aggressive, you could get in with the break of this high right here. Or you could go up here, and if you want to count the wicks as a high, wait for it to break here. And that would be aggressive, because obviously we don't have a third touch, which you hear us talking about a lot. But if anybody trades trend lines, you'll notice that sometimes you don't get a third touch, it just takes off. So we're going to go aggressive right here. We'll call this aggressive. Or here, if you want to do the wick. And the stop loss would be underneath the trend line. Now I want to bring this up. If you watched the price action video before, and what I said earlier, this is my swing low because I have 2 reds and I have 2 greens. And I know I said this was the higher high, this was a higher low, this was a higher high. And we're looking for a higher low, which works perfectly. So I'm not going to tell you that's not right. But my rules say all this was just consolidation, just wide consolidation. We got 2 greens, but didn't get 2 reds. We got reds, but we didn't get 2 greens. Here was the low. And this was the high. Here was 2 reds and 2 greens, 2 greens and 2 reds. I'm looking for that third bounce, which we got right here. And you're looking at the same thing. Aggressively, you could get in once it clears this candle. A little less aggressive, you can wait for it to break the high because we set a low. And what are we waiting for? We're waiting for a higher high. We have our third touch. And our exit would be when it breaks the trend again. So if you waited, you're in here. Not waiting for a retest, we're just waiting for a break. And this is what happened. Switch this down some, bring this down. Now, you can see we're having trouble bouncing here. And you can see how far away we are and how much we might have to give back if we're going to wait for it to come back here to break. So you're going to have to use your, just the way you look at things is where you might want to stop out of this. Do you want to see if it comes all the way back down to stop out? Because that's over $1. Are you happy up in here? Are you happy here? Because if you're looking at, again, you're looking at price action. Lower low. We'll go a couple.
Please get your clothes.
There's your higher high off of this lower low, way up here. Here's your trend line. You know, so do you want to wait and say, yeah, I'm going to wait for it to break? Or do you want to see what happens here? And we're going to go one more because we're going to bring up another point here. As soon as I go back because I hit the wrong button. I'm going to do that a lot, by the way. I am in the chat, the Spy Pit chat every day. And I know for a fact, and some of y'all on this call, that y'all are yelling puts right now at the top of your lungs. I'm getting in the puts, I'm getting in the puts, I'm getting in the puts. I want to point something out. Price action. Higher high, higher low, higher high. What do you expect? You expect a higher low. This is not a reversal. Technically, until it breaks down here. This whole time you should be expecting a higher low either here or here. This should be where you would think it would bounce. This should be your thinking at the time. Just price action. Now, some of y'all are going to do this. We're quite aware of that. This could be a legitimate scalp. But you have to be thinking scalp. You cannot be thinking reversal. So we'll go one more because it touches again. Third time, red candle. You get into your puts and you're looking for the break of this trend to get out. And like I said, you should be thinking here or here for the higher low to be set. But since we know that even though Jimmy's saying no calls, even though we're screaming no calls, I mean no puts, Jimmy's putting in there no puts. Everybody's saying no put. There are people in this Discord and in this chat room that's going to take this put. We know it. So we want to at least point it out. But we are still in an uptrend, so you should be thinking scalp only. So it comes down. And look where it bounces. So now you scalped your puts. Now you get out. We're going to delete this. We have set our, I know it's a long run, but we have set our higher low. We're still in an uptrend. If you like, you could draw another line like this.
This is a live stream.
But I wouldn't delete this line yet because this
No.
is the
Yeah.
overall day trend so far. So I would, even if you drew another line, I'd keep this one in here. So we're going to keep going. This is technically the second one, how I would do it.
Got a question for you when you get a chance, OT.
It's go like that for the second trend. And just keep them both running at the same time. So we set our higher low. We double topped. We set a higher low again. So we're looking at an entry at the break of here. And the reason is because we are continuing this trend. We haven't really, even though we've had this huge run, we have not broken this trend yet, this overall trend. Let me get to the break and then. So right there was the break. Could be an entry for continuation. Go ahead, Golden.
No, I just wanted to make sure. We did have a question here on, I believe it was on the way down. The question is from Mark. He said, why wasn't your entry as soon as the third touch candle turned green?
You talking
Mark,
here?
Go ahead.
Down here, Mark? Or
Yes.
if you wanted to be super aggressive, you could. As soon as it touched. Now, some of the things you have to watch out for is that even though we're trend continuing, getting in here would be super aggressive because you don't know whether you're going to set a lower high and go down. You don't know if you're going to double top and start moving sideways. So you really don't know if you're going to set a higher high till you break the previous high. So
So you
this
would
could be
say
super super aggressive right here.
where would conservative be?
The break of this high right here. Because now you know with this break, and again, you don't have to wait for the retest. As soon as it breaks here, you know that we're heading for a higher high. You don't know where that higher high is. And if I was seeing this live, I would have guessed right here, because that was where the latest high was, but we blew right through that. You know, if you got a little word here, you could take a little bit off. You got the 9 that you can use. And just followed it right on up. But these 4 wicks, definitely, that part of this was slowing down.
Yeah. By the way, guys, OT is going to be showing you not only some good entries, but he's going to show you some risky entries, some aggressive entries, and some conservative entries. You know, you got 3 different, I guess, ways to look at it. You know, the risky ones obviously are very risky, and it is not something that Jimmy promotes. Right? Jimmy really wants you guys to be risk averse, but we know that some of you guys are can be gamblers or can be super risky. You know, maybe not gamblers, but maybe super risky. But some of you are gamblers. But that aside, you'll have a risky entry, you'll have an aggressive entry, and then you have your conservative entry. Right? So the promotion here is going to be the conservative entry. We're always going to promote that, but still, we'll show you the 3 different, or OT is going to be showing you the 3 different entries, and then things to keep in mind. So back to you, OT.
Okay. So you know that we usually tell you to wait for the 3rd touch. First 2, you draw your line, you wait for your 3rd touch. But what we're going to tell you today is after the 2nd touch, if you want to get aggressive, you can go in after it breaks the high. Now this particular high was a double top. If you counted this as a high, this was your 2nd touch, you adjusted your trend line, and you got in at the break of this high. Your stop is always when it breaks the trend line. That's your exit no matter what, when it breaks the trend line going down. And as you can see, this was aggressive because you actually went negative before it turned on you. And then you got your 3rd touch. And we point that out. That's why price action is a little bit something you really a little bit more have to pay attention to when you're doing just trend line trading. So here you had your 2nd touch. If you wanted to be aggressive, you got in right here. You also had the confluence of this was a continuation of the uptrend. We have never set a lower low yet. And the reason that comes into play, we'll go up a little bit, is that it never touches a 3rd time. And the reason we included this one is because of this unusual action. You just have to realize that we never set a lower low. We are still in an uptrend. It's just steeper now. This one still goes and still counts. But if you missed this one and you missed that run, if you recognize that this was still a continuation of the uptrend, as soon as it touched, you could have got in right here when it broke this double top or this higher high and rode it back up again, looking at this as your exit, the break of this. This is the trend line you entered on. This is the trend line you want to break. This is the trend line you entered on at 414.55, somewhere in this area, 415. You had this huge run up. do you really want to wait for it to come all the way back? And I'm going to show you a way that you might not have to do that. And it's all got to do with price action. So we're setting a higher high, lower low, higher high. I'm sorry, higher low. We're getting weaker. And you can see we're getting weaker. We're consolidated, moved up just a tad bit. We're consolidating. This trend is getting real weak. Not that it can't go boom again, but it's getting weak. We set a higher high, still trending. Now, we broke here. So if you entered here, or here, or here, you know, aggressive, pretty conservative, you're definitely out here. If you enter down here, higher highs, lows, highs, lows, highs, lows, highs, lows, highs, low, high, low, lower, high. We just broke the trend. So even if you entered here, this would be a great exit. The trend is broke right here. Okay, aggressive shorts, are y'all ready? Because we know y'all aggressive shorts are now going, yay, it's the top. So, go ahead.
When would be a good time for questions? You
Go
take
ahead.
some questions now, or
Yep.
you want to wait till afterwards?
Go right ahead. Let's do it as kind of as we go.
Cool. Bex, you got the floor, bruv. You had a question?
Hey, this is Bex. Thanks, OT and Golden. I had a question about the second uptrend line, if you don't mind putting that back on there. Okay, on the second touch, I don't know, I can't really see the time on that. It could be 10:20-ish. Yep. Okay, so with that one, before like when we're looking at this and assuming we want to exit, when you play the replay on this, it kind of dips down below the trend line, and this is something I'm asking as someone that might have left their runner, or for example didn't know when a good exit time would be, for example. And when we saw that it went below the trend line for a second, and like fear and panic comes into play when it's technically starting off as a red candle, and then it goes back up. It dips below the line, and then it goes back up. I mean, it's not only on this one. It could have been on the second to last candle, maybe the third candle on that trend line at the very top. How do we distinguish whether it's, do we just gotta wait until it closes and see where it closes and then make that decision, or are we looking for that touch? Because ultimately it can be a wick. Does my question make sense?
Would you mind rephrasing that one more time? Just
Okay, so
short.
in short, how can we? What's a strategy that we can keep in mind to distinguish whether it's a full break or it's just wicking through, whether it's support or resistance or trend line specifically in this scenario? And I'm asking as someone that sometimes struggles with the exit. Am I saying the answer? Do we just gotta wait for it to close and see what happens?
If I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking, do we get out of the trade once the trend line breaks? Are we
Whether
waiting
it's
for a
a
candle
wick,
to close, or if it wicks
exactly.
down below it, should we get out? So we
Yep.
have the wick down below. Do we exit, or do we wait for the candle to close underneath it before we exit?
Thank you for putting that in much prettier words.
You got it.
We are waiting for the close.
Okay. Thank you.
I am specifically waiting for the close. especially if you're in down here, because now you know you held through this supposedly. If you didn't
Mhm.
take profits here, we set it. We set a double top, so I am worried. But until we broke, cause let's take this off and let's go back a little bit. So let's say you see this as a higher high and you're waiting
Mhm.
for the higher low, or you're even going to say, you know what, I'm good. I got in down here. I'm good. I'm going to wait for it to break trend. Even if you were thinking that. We double topped here. So I'm a little worried that we're going to break here. So if I was in down here, I would look for the break of trend, which would be the break of this higher low.
Would you draw a line? Would you draw a trend from that third touch to your last to that last higher low?
You could do that
Okay.
and then adjust it.
Okay.
But what I'm looking at here is, okay, I held through this. We double topped. Let's get one more candle. Now we double topped. If it breaks here, I'm out. I'm not waiting for this.
Right. Right.
That's too
Yeah.
much. So I'm waiting for the break of the trend. So I'm not drawing this one yet.
Mhm.
So we go, and now all of a sudden we didn't even get one more.
Okay.
We went down lower. So now I'm drawing this one here. Because either we're going to break trend by setting a lower low by breaking right here, or we're going to keep
Yeah.
this trend continuation. So
Mhm.
until we know, so my stop loss would have been here. Now we've set this, I'm drawing that second trend line.
Gotcha.
If you're drawing one like this, which was acceptable, because we still don't have a second touch, you would have just adjusted it.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But now we're taking price line from last Sunday. We set it. We're looking for a higher high. I'm waiting for the breaker here because the triple top is still in play. That was the break. And then we took off. You could have done it here as, aggressive. You could have done it here if you want to be a little conservative.
So I got another question for you, OT. I think it's a good one too, coming from Skadoosh. So we talked about how we want to wait for the candle to close beneath the trend line before we get out of the trade. But he asked the question, well, what happens if it knifes down? If it's just a big candle that drops down? What are your thoughts about that?
So he's saying a big candle that came like down to here but hadn't closed yet.
Right. I mean, it knifes down. I mean, it's
That's-
a huge candle.
It's going to be your call. Do you want to wait for it to close? Or do you want to just wait for that break? Now, with me, we'll go ahead and draw this here. So it came, it broke through here. Now let's go back to our break and retest. What are we waiting for? We're waiting for a retest to continue down. So with that in mind, maybe you want to get out when it breaks.
What about when if you move ahead a little bit, move this time ahead a little bit? There's a point where we break this trend line here. Okay, boom. Okay, so let's say right here at this moment, it just knifes down, right? So we did get a candle close below that trend line, so that would definitely give you your exit right there. But let's say that first candle not only does it wick down below it, but then it just, I mean, we get that huge Twizzler down. If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying, hey, if you see that, get out ASAP. Is that right?
Yeah, you want to go back to price action.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have picked here. So if it wicked, if it was way down here and we had 30 seconds to go, maybe you get out.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it both ways. We've seen the red candles come and close and just keep going. We've seen big red candles come up and wick up. It's no telling.
Would you say that it's conservative to get out as soon as the break happens?
In this case, yes.
Like, even if it wicks below, would that be a conservative exit versus waiting for it to close below?
Yes, but there's another reason here that's different than here.
Yes.
And we got, I know I keep harping back on it and I apologize, but it's price action.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference here? We set a higher low. I'm sorry, we set a lower high.
Mm-hmm.
Our trend is broke. So if we've got a big Twizzler down here, I'd have gotten out.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it broke. Just as soon as it broke. Because price action said this uptrend is over. Now here you got lucky. But if you were noticing price action, you might have gotten out up here. Or maybe you got out when it, touched. You noticed the lower high.
Mm-hmm.
If you were paying attention. I know these candles are a little small, and if you're not used to it, you may not have noticed it. So you get out on the break and the close. You could have got out here if you panicked, which was right at this resistance. Well, almost.
Mm-hmm.
Before it wicked up, you'd have lost, what's that, 5 cents? I don't think you'd have noticed that. Some people might want to give it a chance, wait for it to wick back up, see if it tests. But I'm out, especially here, because it's a lower high. The trend is broke. Which is almost the same opposite reason why you'd want to get in here when this broke. The trend is not broken and we're continuing up. Good, guys? Good, Golden?
Yep, we're good.
I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. We had a very long discussion about this yesterday between the horsemen. This is not an easy topic. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Trend trading is tough. There are a lot of different ways to do it. And what we're trying to do, like Golden said, is give you the safest way to do it. Plus add in some, okay, this could be extremely aggressive. This is conservative. Because there's just so many different ways you can do it. No, Kafir, when it breaks the trend, you're out. When it breaks the line, you're out. Or, in this case, the trend actually broke before the trend line did.
Hey, old timer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, regarding that. So initially, when I'm structuring my trade and I say I'm going to play a trend line play, right? So in this case, I would get in with a mental stop. Then I would assume, right? And then whenever my trend breaks, I'm getting out, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then no stop loss then with this play.
Yeah. If there's trend line, your original, well, it doesn't matter. You have a stop loss, but the stop loss is below the trend line.
Yeah, but it's meant. Okay.
Right. So if you got in
All right.
here, and then it's the same way. If it broke, you could get out.
Mhm.
If you wait for it to close, you could get out.
Perfect.
I mean, that's
Thanks.
going to be your preference of how risk averse you personally are.
Yep. Thank you.
Now I want to point something out. We got any more questions, Golden, before I go on?
No, I think you're good for right now.
Okay. So let's go back to these people that got in here. And now y'all are up, I'm going to guess, 150%, maybe 200%. And you're like, it's going to keep going up. I'm not even going to wait for this to break. I said, well, this is going to be my stop. I'm waiting. I don't care. I'm up 200%. I think it's going to go to 440. I'm going to give you a clue how we know that this trend line is going to break when it gets here. I bet y'all could guess it. Okay, again, there's people in the chat right now yelling, puts! This is the end of the world. You could draw your trend line. It's steep. You technically got your third touch right here, and we're dropping. We did set a higher low, but you're still scalping. And the reason I hope everybody knows by now is because we have not set a lower low yet. So we don't know when it's going to bounce up, but I can almost guarantee you it will bounce up. And then you were out here. And then this is no longer. We'll go a couple more and then explain something. Now, you can count this as a lower high. My two candles system doesn't work all the time. So this is definitely a lower high. How do you know that this trend line is going to break when it gets to it? You don't have to answer. I just gave you a minute to think about it. Because we are now trending in the opposite direction. There's our lower high. There's our lower low. There's our lower high. We're heading back down, but we are trending in the opposite direction. And we bounced it. Go one more. Okay. So based on everything we told you, you might want to know why we didn't get in right here. Hopefully I've already answered it. So why didn't we get in on this touch right here? And this is the reason why. So we can delete this one. It's now no longer valid. We can delete this one. It's now no longer valid. For those of you that did this and got out of your puts, you're no longer in a trade. You can move the trend to here. But like we said in the trend line video, don't move the trend if you're still in the trade. So now you have your second touch, your third touch. Now we're looking at puts. Same
Got
way
a
we
question
looked up
for you
here.
when you get a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Got a good question from Thunderboy. He asked, do you have rules for the angle of the trend? Any rules for the angle?
Okay, I do, but it's might be something we have to do on a separate video.
Mm-hmm.
I do look at the angle of the 24 degrees, the 45 degrees. There are a couple of them that I personally look at. And there is I don't know if it's in this one I can do it. Yep, there is the angle tool here that we can use, and we can go through that maybe in another video to get a little bit more deeper into the trends themselves. If that's okay with everybody, then trying to do it now.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can cover in
Yeah.
another. We got a few other videos in this trend line entry and exit series that we're going to be doing. So this is not it, by the way, guys. We're going to be covering flags and also angles and some other nuances here with the trend lines. And so this one is just basic entries and exits. But Thunderboy, that's a great question, and we're going to come back to that one. That's okay with you?
Yeah, we still have, we got wedges, we got flags, we got,
Mm.
there's a lot of different ones that we can do from here, but this just basic.
We're trying to make sure that the video stays hyper focused.
So now our second, this was, like I said, this was our second touch. You could have played this steep if you wanted to. You got out here. As long as you got out or were not in that original, we move it to here because we're still trending down. So the second touch, if you wanted to get aggressively, you could have got into the break right here. And then we came down. Then we have our third touch. The aggressive entry would be as soon as it touched because we're downtrending. And in this case, the previous candle and the low is all the same. So conservatively, you could got in down here. This one even gave you a fourth touch if you missed that one. So if you were super aggressive on the second touch, you wait for the break of the low. You can come back on the third touch. Aggressive is as soon as it touches. And then conservative would be either under the low or the break of the previous candle. Like I said, in this case, it happened to be exactly the same. So you'd have got in on this candle here. Exit, obviously, is the break of the trend line itself. Which would have been here. Now, we're not in a trade. You might recognize orange box from Jimmy. But we exited. If we got in here, we exited like we were supposed to at the break, but we are still downtrending. So we can move it to there. And if you wanted to get in here when it broke, we're still continuing. We haven't showed any sign of breaking this downtrend. That might be a little risky for some, but I don't think that's a bad entry. Jimmy says consolidation and continuation, and that's what you got. And then you were out here. So now this one's no longer. And now sitting right here, you might notice we set the low. Look what we've done. We've gone up here to a higher high. We broke this high. So now we'll wait to see if we trend in the other direction. So we set the higher high. Now we're looking to see if we set a higher low, which we did. So now we're trending in the opposite direction and the game starts all over again. Here's the second touch. Aggressively, you could get in here. The break. Conservatively, you could wait to see if it touches again. Which in this case, it didn't do either. And then it's up to your judgment. You know, do you count that as a third touch? Do you count that as a trend move? Which is a second touch now. So you enter the breaker here, which was this candle here. But then we got out. We made maybe pennies. Broke even at best. If you got out as soon as it broke. If you waited for it to close, then we stopped out of this one with a minor loss. Just doesn't work every time. So that's about all we got. I wanted to show you one that didn't work, along with the ones that did work. There is a little bit more of a art than rules for trendline trading. You really have to watch your higher highs and higher lows. Really get a, you know, this was the higher high, this was the higher low, that looked good, looked strong. This higher high honestly looked a little weak to me. The low looked a little weak. Just personally, I don't think I've been excited about this one, even for a quick scalp. Just because the way the price action was going. And I can play out and show you what happened. We just kind of went sideways for a little bit.
Got a question for you, OT.
Mhm.
Samba Trader asks at 11:32, why not draw a downward trend line?
That is more of a flag that we're going to get into in a later video. It is a type of trend line, but it is more of a flag. And we're going to do flags all by itself.
He says, I mean back at the 11:13 candle.
Oh, 13. Because we had one. So we had this one, and it broke here, so we moved it. That one broke here, so you moved it. So you already had one down here. Now, if you wanted to do something like this, you could, but we already had one.
Does that answer your question, Samba Trader, or
See,
still have questions on it?
let's go back over here and see if I can see how far away we are here. We're not that far away here. I'd have just kept that one. And you had the 9 as well. So I don't think there was no use in drawing a steeper one. Like I said, we discussed this last night among the horsemen, and you know, coming up with hard, fast rules. The only really hard, fast rules that we could come up with is follow the price action. I mean, we gave you some aggressive entries on the second touch, some conservative entries, but watch the price action. And then when stuff like this happens, you can see this trend was slowing down. We were rolling over, and then down we came.
So Furious
Okay.
George asks to summarize the conservative rules. After the third touch, enter on the break of the previous high. Exit as soon as a close breaks trend, unless there's been a previous lower high or higher low. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Let me show you. You'd have missed this one 100%. There was no third touch. That's why I think following price action is a little bit of a stronger edge than waiting for a third touch. Because if you saw this, saw the lower low, crap, higher low, saw the trend was still going up, you could have entered when it broke this high. You could have comfortably entered here. Conservatively, you could have waited for a third touch, but you'd have missed this run right here, which was almost $2. A little less than 16. Yeah, it was $1. So you'd have missed that whole run waiting for your third touch. So third touch, conservative. You could go on second touch with your break of this high right here. You could have gone second touch, aggressive with the break of this candle, conservative with the break of the high. We'll go back down here. With a third touch, aggressive would be right at the touch. Then the break of this previous is conservative, and the very safe would be the break of the high. You're always going to be safe with the break of the previous high or low if we're going down. That's always going to be the safest. And then the ultimate conservative would be waiting for the third touch. And I would say most of the time we probably do get a third touch. Most of the time. We didn't here. But here, you know, we had this, but here eventually, when you were sitting here, we did get our third touch. Then you made a little till it broke. And then brought it back out. I mean, you could have a rule that says if it doesn't touch 3 times, you don't get in. Which would be perfectly fine. Because you'd have got in on this third touch. You'd have been in anyway. You'd have probably been in this final run if you didn't get out in here. Yeah, pure. So more, that kind of goes into trend angles, but the slighter the angle, the more likely you're going to get a third touch. Like I said, this was the big one, but this was just trend continuation. So this kind of messed up everything on this trend line here. Anything else, guys? Golden, did I miss anything?
No, that was good. That was good. Looks like you answered Furious's question. Trade Monkey asked, do we look at both 1 minute trend line and 5 minute trend line? Do we overlay them? You mind if I answer that question?
No, I would say go right ahead.
Yeah, if you're looking at the 1 minute, stick to the 1 minute. If you're looking at the 5 minute, so here would be a better answer. Let's say you did draw a trend line on the 5 minute. Okay, you drew a trend line on the 5 minute, and then you're looking to take a trade on the 1 minute. Could you do that? Yes, you could do that, depending if your platform can actually support, having a trend line time frame. It doesn't move on the other one. I know that with TradingView, that can be problematic, but with TOS, It's really sharp. You can draw a trend line on a higher time frame, and it's exactly where it needs to be on across all time frames. And so that is something that you can do. But I would say to keep it simple, if you're going to draw a trend line on the 5 minute and you're watching the 5, then that's where you need to make your trade, you know. But if you're looking at the 1 minute and you draw a trend line at the 5 minute, you know, there just might be some. If you're able to, you know, take in that information and know when to get out, based off of what OT was just talking about, hey, go for it. But I would say keep it simple. You know, stick to one time frame to watch for your entries and your exits. I mean, you could draw your trend line on your 5. It'll show up on your 1 minute, and then you make your trade on your 1 minute, and you watch the 1 minute for the break. You could do that as well. So no hard and fast answer there, just more along the lines of what can you do to keep things simple and less complicated. But hopefully that answers the question there, Trade Monkey. Would you agree with that, OT?
Yes, sir. And my only other suggestion would be if you draw the trend on the 5 line, you on the 5 minute, take the trade on the 5 minute. Don't look at the 1 minute. Just don't look. Just make the trade 5 minute only. The 1 minute will scare you.
Okay, see.
Tech trader, I'll tell you what I think from my experience is that the trend line is a wall, and each touch is like a hammer to the wall. But I'm not worried about that wall getting weak until about the 4th or 5th touch. Then, you know, if it's touched 4 times, it's touched 5 times, I might not take that trade off the trend line on the 6th touch. But the 3rd time, I think you're pretty safe.
Cool. Tech trader is cool. And Mike has a question. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I actually realize what my answer is now, but I just want to make sure that's what it is. Sometimes you think what the answer is, and you got to make sure it is that. I was thinking about it. I drew a trend line from 934 about. You draw a line there. The lowest point of the chart, OT. No, 934. Or 30, yeah, 34, yeah. 35, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
The lowest point, wick to wick, all the way to the 1117 or 1120. But I think I know what my answer is. Yeah, I think I know. And that's where it got me out, right? So, but this is what I think it is. The reason why this didn't work and it got me stopped out was because the trend was already broken. It created a lower low from that low of 1014, right? 1013 about, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 1013 low was broken at around 1115, right? That's why I shouldn't draw trend lines like this, right?
You could draw the trend like this. I mean, I don't want to avoid the question, but it's something we're going to do a little later. In this same,
Okay to draw the trend line then, right?
yeah, it's the same scenario as this one was, this trend line here. So you have the same.
It breaks, yeah.
Yeah. See, you could have got in here for a call, right? I mean, that's what you're thinking.
No, actually, I counted that as a second touch, and I counted a third touch at 12:15.
Okay. Now, what?
12:15.
Once it touched right here, what are we doing?
Going back up. Double bottom.
Yeah, but what are we doing here?
We're doing lower.
What is this doing?
What is this doing?
We're
It's
down.
breaking.
Yeah, we're downtrending.
We're downtrending. Okay.
Yeah, and you never buy calls in a downtrend.
I wouldn't buy it there. I bought it at 12:15 about on the third touch.
The third touch.
Come on, Mike.
But it didn't touch here.
Yeah, I bought it there, but I thought it would touch, and what it did, What happened was that it continued down. I thought it was
Yep.
gonna be a third touch though.
Can I jump in here, OT?
Yes, sir. Please.
So I think this would, on a higher time frame, this would make a little bit more sense. But on the 1 minute time frame, you want to follow the trend closely. Is what you want to do, right? So as we're trending up, you want to draw your trend line going upwards. As we're going down, you want to go ahead and draw your trend line downwards, and just follow the price action as the day is moving. This trend line, you wouldn't be able to really draw it until what was this, like a good hour into the day or more than that. And drawing a trend line like this throughout the day, not actually following the price action, but just drawing it this way. The big question you got to ask yourself is, how do you trade this, right? And so I know you said that you were anticipating that third touch and jumping into a trade, from that third touch, which is completely understandable. I can get it from that perspective. Well, what you would want to do is you would want to see, let's say you did go down that road and you did, right? You would want to wait to see if there's going to be a bounce, right? Even if you did get into that trade and it stopped you out, cool. Technically, is it a third touch on a trend line in an upward trend? Yes, it is. Technically, it is, right? And so technically, if that was your trade, would you have traded your plan correctly? Yes, technically you would have. However, now that you've gone through this trade, now you have to look at this for yourself and be able to tweak and refine, right? Refine here. And with this refining now, you have to ask yourself this question, okay, what am I going to do next time to ensure that when I make this trade, that it is more likely that the odds are in my favor, that it's going to go in the direction that I want it to go in, right? And so you might want to wait for a bounce. That's number one. Number two, you might want to be a little bit more patient to see what are we doing with the trend. That's number two. Number three, you might want to follow the trend line. If you look at the price going down, I think that's at what is that, 12.15? I think that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right around there. You can there's a downward trend line that you can draw there, right? OT, do you see that downward trend line you can draw there? Mm-hmm. Right, exactly, right? So there's your downward trend line that you can draw there, right? And so if this bottom trend line wasn't there, right, you probably want to wait to see how we react with this downward trend line. And so ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is listening to OT, and he's done an amazing job of showing you, drawing trend lines, identifying the trends, which is higher low, higher highs, lower lows, lower highs, just visual representation of that. As the day is continuing, that's what you want to do. The trend that you drew here that you traded on, it is like a longer term trend, and you probably won't get all the vitamin G, all of the gain. You won't get all the juice that you really want out of it. You probably get way more juice by trying to follow the trend as the trend is starting to develop. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, it makes sense. That was like the answer that I had in my head after when I started thinking about it, but I wasn't sure. But you explained it much better than what I was thinking, so I understand very well.
Very good. Awesome.
Thanks, man. Thanks, OT, also.
Yes, sir.
All right. Trend lines. I feel like trend lines. Okay.
I knew there was way up here. Somebody, hold on. With scales. Yeah, scales. We're gonna do channels, and another video by itself as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. You could draw one on the top and the bottom, so you could have. Hold on. Let's get rid of this one. This is probably a bad example. Let's do this one. And this tells you something but we're going to do that in a whole nother video. It's also trend line related. It's just trend line's got a lot, like you said, a lot in it. Golden does a great job because, guys, I want to throw the whole book at you, and he keeps telling me no, chapter by chapter. So Golden's doing a great job. I don't see anything else, Golden.
Yeah. OT.
All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording then. I don't see any more questions. I appreciate everybody's time and stand by for Golden's what's going to happen next week. I don't think he's been wrong too many times, so y'all want to stick around for this one.